Good afternoon. My name is Carolina Morales, and on behalf of Talk Corporate, I would like to welcome you to this webinar about business idioms and phrasal verbs. Today, our presenter is Bob Berkeley, an ESOL teacher with more than 35 years of experience in business management and teaching. Let's welcome Bob. Hi, Bob.
Thanks, Carolina, and welcome everybody to the webinar. I just wanted to introduce also that this is an example of the kinds of things that we do here at Talk. Some of you may be familiar with how we have these webinars, but we also do personal classes as well as individual classes. As a matter of fact, one of the things I did this summer with Carolina was I did a Skype program from Spain, which worked out very well. So to get started, I thought we would start talking about common business idioms and phrasal verbs. The first item is going to be the business idioms. And they have various meanings and implications in casual conversations, and particularly in business communication. Very important these days as you become more used to using English, everyday language, that you'll see more and more idioms in our use of English. And I'll be explaining what idioms and phrasal verbs are, and I'll put them into business situations. And at the end of each section, we'll have exercises on each form. Now, in these exercises, or actually at any time during this presentation, if you have questions, you can write them in under the chat line, and we will try to answer them. So let's start with, what is an idiom? Well, an idiom is an expression of two or more words that means something other than the literal meanings of the individual words. Now, I'm sure you have used idioms in your own language, but in the direct translation to English doesn't always work. As a matter of fact, what I discovered working with many non-native English speakers is that the translation of many words and phrases do not work in the English language. Of course, we make it more difficult for the rest of the world to understand us. Anyway, now, for example, under the literal use of a word, let's use catch. The past tense of catch is caught. So the literal use could be something like, I went fishing yesterday, but caught nothing. Now, the idiomatic use of the same word might be, the movie star caught my attention. Now, we actually didn't catch anything. I mean, you can't physically catch attention, but the fact is that we use that to say, hey, I noticed somebody. Somebody stood out. So, caught my attention. Now, the expressions, the idioms, are usually fixed. The phrases are not changeable. I've heard some people try to change them around, either by mistake or because they thought it would be a better way to say it, and it just really doesn't work. And you really can't make up your own. Now, one of the things that I've discovered being in this business for some time is that the phenomena of texting has provided us some new idioms, and they take the form of what we call acronyms. In other words, they are just the first letters of each word. I'm sure you've seen some of these before, but I always thought that LOL was lots of luck, but apparently it's turned into laughing out loud. So we learn new things, they become available to us in different forms. So, business idioms. Idioms are useful because they describe situations that would take time to describe using other words. But it's important, as I've said, not to use the wrong idiom at the wrong time. or an outdated idiom. It's interesting, idioms come and go. For example, there is an idiom that I used to say long ago, or my parents used to say, and in order to make children behave, we might have said, mind your P's and Q's. Well, nobody ever knew quite what that meant. My best definition of that is mind your pints and quarts. And it used to be that English bartenders would say that to their patrons to make them behave. Anyway, so that's an outdated idiom. The chances are you'll never hear that again. So I feel good that I'm the only one who's ever said that to you. Often you can change the tense and pronoun of an idiom. After the race, it was difficult to catch my breath. Or, she barely caught her breath after the race. In the business world, idioms are an important part of conveying what you might mean. Often, your colleagues, your office workers, the people who are sitting around you right now, or maybe the other people you interact with in the office, expect you to understand how they speak about business, their business, somebody else's business. In the modern office environment, business idioms and understanding them have become a requirement. They almost make you a member of the team. I had a student from Spain who was here on an exchange program, and he came to me one day and he was a little put off in that people would say things and he didn't really catch on. And he asked me about one in particular called preaching to the choir. It made him feel a little bit left out because everybody was nodding their heads and this and that. So it is important to learn the idioms that may be used. By the way, preaching to the choir means saying something to somebody who already agrees with you. So that's preaching to the choir. Okay, so today we'll be focusing on some of the most used expressions, trying not to focus too much on the origin of the idiom, as this can be confusing and often open to disagreement. Matter of fact, there may be a lot of people who would argue with me about what P's and Q's mean. But be that as it may, I've also included some practice exercises so that you can see the idioms used in context, which means that you would understand what the meaning of that idiom is in a sentence. So let's start with 15 business idioms with their meaning and an example of how to use each. The first one, across the board. This means everything, everyone or everything. So an example might be, the computer company decided to give the workers an across-the-board increase in their salary. That means everybody got an increase. It might not have been the same increase, but everybody got an increase. All right, let's go on to the next one. Hang out one's shingle. Now, this is often meant to be used to describe somebody who is opening their own business. Usually a professional business like a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist. And often a shingle years ago was literally a little sign that hung on a doorway or over a doorway that advertised you as a professional. And the example would be my friend decided to hang out his shingle as a dentist soon after he finished school. Now, hanging out a shingle just in this sense means that he became a dentist and put something potentially in the lobby of a building. But what I described before is where it came from. The next one, jack up the price of something. This means to make a price higher. The steel company will jack up the price of steel at the beginning of the year. Often, or sometimes, this might have a negative connotation. You go into a car dealer one day and the price is this, and you go back the next day and they've jacked up the price. You may not feel that happy about it. Okay, the next one. Make money hand over fist. We use this quite often, actually, to talk about a situation where all of a sudden you're making a lot of money that either was expected or unexpected, but it's coming in fast. As a matter of fact, one of the origins of this, I think, is that it's coming in so fast you don't even have time to count it with your hands. So the small ice cream shop is making money hand over fist this summer. All right, the next one. Very appropriate for a business environment. I've often used this as a way to describe how somebody would be personally paying for something that the business did not pay for or reimburse you for. So my out-of-pocket expenses were very high during the business trip. So in other words, he didn't get or she didn't get paid back for a lot of the expenses that were incurred or that this person incurred on their own. Next one, table a discussion. This literally means to postpone a discussion so that you may be in a meeting, but either because of time constraints or you don't have all the information or for whatever reason, you're not going to finish that particular issue. So you table it. You literally leave it on the table. So we tabled the discussion about the salary issue until the next meeting. Okay, another one. Corner the market means to dominate a particular market with a product. So, for example, when the smartphones came out, certainly Apple was one that cornered the market on smartphones. The large company has cornered the market for cell phones in our city. So if you corner the market, that means that you have the majority of the market share. Okay, next one. Piece of the action. What we mean by this is that if you want a piece of the action, that you want to share in the profits of something. So the inventor wanted a piece of the action for the new equipment that he had invented. In other words, he wanted a share. He wanted an equity stake in that business. So piece of the action means you want a piece of that. Next one. Back to square one. This means to start something over again. We thought the technician solved the problem, but the system continued to malfunction. We're back to square one, unfortunately. So it means that you might have done a lot of work, but when you have to start it all over again, you say, uh-oh, we're back to square one. All right, next. Ahead of the curve. This means when someone is doing something that is better than expected or something is happening that might be better than expected. So for example, when everyone in the office understands the objective, the business has more of a chance to be ahead of the curve. So you're staying ahead of potential maybe market fluctuations or some sort of new inventions or entrepreneurial type ventures that are happening in the marketplace. You're staying ahead of the curve. Okay, the next one. To learn the ropes, which is kind of what you're all doing now. You're learning the ropes of business idioms, and this means to learn the basics of something. So, I like my new job. I'm learning the ropes. Usually we use this when you are or something or somebody is new to something. They don't have much experience with it, and as they get more experience, they're learning the ropes. Next one. Read between the lines. We often say this in many different situations, but certainly in business, it means to understand something that isn't communicated directly, which involves understanding what someone is implying, which means that they're saying it, they're not saying it out loud, but either through their body language or something else they refer to. Reading between the lines means that they're trying to get a point across, and you need to, or somebody needs to, understand. So he did not say he wants to leave the company, but I can read between the lines. He's just not happy here. So without saying it, the manager assumes that that employee is not happy because he read between the lines, again, whether it was attitude, voice intonation, it could be a number of different things. Okay, the next one. One that you may hear every once in a while is the elephant in the room. This means that there is some obvious problem or controversy that nobody really wants to talk about, but it's hanging there. Everybody knows it's there, but nobody is going to talk about it. So we should have been discussing our huge debt situation, but nobody wanted to talk about the elephant in the room. So imagine an elephant sitting in the room and nobody even wants to address it. That's what this is talking about. The next one, word of mouth. It's when people hear about something through informal conversation with friends, business associates, relatives. Actually, I would include now, as I thought about this, maybe social media almost could be used as a word of mouth. Now, I know there's a lot of advertising on it, but people speaking to other people, their friends, through social media may actually have some recommendation. So many local restaurants rely on word of mouth to get new customers. So those restaurants may or may not be using magazines or newspapers, but they're using their reputation when people talk about it as opposed to some other form of getting the message out. The next one, in full swing. In full swing means that something started and is progressing at a fast pace. Although construction on the new building started slowly, it is in full swing now, meaning that it is going and we're getting there. We're going to make our dates. We're going to be on or under budget. So it's in full swing. Okay, so that brings us to a little exercise that I was hoping that if you, I'll give a few seconds to have you think about the context. Up on the top of the page, there are 10 idioms. And so what, actually they're definitions. The idioms are in bold print in the sentences. And what I'd like you to do is think about, and if you want to answer using the chat, that's fine, or just wait for me to answer. But let's start with number 1. Stella Myers, the famous movie actress, just wrote her biography last month. It's a very popular book. So many people are buying the book. It's selling like hotcakes. Very, very usual idiom, selling like hotcakes, to describe such a situation. So as an example, let's just fill this one in right now. It means selling quickly and successfully. So it's selling like hotcakes. Now again, I'm not going to get into the origin of why hotcakes sell so fast, but believe me, they do. Okay, number 2. The owner of the restaurant and the wine supplier are meeting to discuss the price of the wine shipments. And they must also decide how much wine the restaurant will buy each month. They'll talk terms. Any ideas? Okay, well, they'll talk terms. They'll discuss the conditions of a deal. They're going to talk about the terms, maybe in a contract, maybe some other way. Okay, number 3. If the company switched to an environmentally friendly package, they would lose money. The bottom line is that the company won't change for the packaging if it means losing money. Now, you may have heard bottom line before, but anybody have any ideas that they want to chat in on? Okay, let's give you the answer then. The final result of the situation. Now, bottom line usually is it's said pretty firmly. So if somebody says the bottom line is, they're pretty firm on that. Okay, let's do number 4. The Wilson family wanted to expand their hotel. Seemed like a good idea, but they didn't know how much they could afford to spend on the expansion. They needed to look at their finances carefully. They'd have to crunch the numbers before deciding what to do. So in the context, it's obvious that they want to look at finances. So, crunching the numbers. What that means in this context is that you work on the financial aspect of a deal or business. So, crunching the numbers. All right, number 5. The stock for ABC Company has been going up all year, and unexpectedly, the price fell to an all-time low. The bottom dropped out suddenly. So, what we're talking about there is obviously the price fell quickly, and the bottom dropped out. So, it means that there was maybe a rise or even just a moderate movement of the stock, but all of a sudden it went down so fast and precipitously that we would say the bottom dropped out. Price fell substantially lower than an earlier price. Okay, let's go to the next one. So number 6, Marty opened up an ice cream shop near the beach. His shop is the only place in the area that sells ice cream and cold drinks. He's going to be very successful. He'll probably make a killing every summer, which means, okay, all right, here's what it means. To make a killing means to receive high profits or returns. So this also is similar to the one we had before, where it meant hand over fist, right? He was earning money hand over fist. So number 7, the company was giving out free samples at the mall as a promotion for their new products. Of course, it was hard to guess how many samples they'd need over a 2-day period, but they came up with a ballpark figure. Okay? So, ballpark figure. Now, before we give you the answer, just think about a soccer stadium or a baseball stadium or a football stadium. Very big, has a lot of area. So a ballpark figure refers to an estimate. Somewhere in the ballpark. We don't know exactly where, but it's got to be close. Okay. Number 8. Lou invested in a software company just before home computers became popular. He tripled his money in no time. Made a fortune, but didn't have to work for it. It was a sweet deal. Okay, anybody have anything on the top that might be take a guess? Okay, let's go right to the answer. The answer would be a sweet deal would be a very good arrangement or deal. So, number 9. Mary insisted that the company buy in her store, pay the asking price, and give her a 6-month closing. She said if they didn't agree to her conditions, she wouldn't negotiate with them. Instead, she would find another buyer. Everyone said she would drive a hard bargain. Driving a hard bargain. Okay? That means that Mary demanded a lot in the negotiations. It was not easy to do a deal with Mary. Okay, so she demanded a lot in negotiations. Okay, if you have any questions about idioms or you wanted to understand a little bit more about one, feel free to ask. But let's try to move right into the next section, which has to do with phrasal verbs. Now, a phrasal verb is a verb or action word. A verb is an action word with 1 or 2 particles. A particle is a preposition or an adverb. Now, it's not that important that you understand that it's a particle or a preposition and adverb. It's more important that you understand how we put these two together. It's often used to make a more advanced verb easier to understand as well. So examples of verbs: bring, get, go, put, take, turn. Okay? Examples of particles are up, down, out, in, off, on. Those are all particles, prepositions, and sometimes adverbs. So, came up with why would people want to learn phrasal verbs? Well, number one, because they're commonly used in social and business situations in our interactions. Number two, because they can make the difference between understanding and being understood without being embarrassed or feeling awkward. They also improve your English fluency, and they could affect, in theory, business relationships and successes. So some phrasal verbs are easy and they actually make sense, while others have a totally different meaning for what you might think, which is what makes phrasal verbs even more difficult. For example, the word out. Out means to leave somewhere or not be inside. If you go out, it means you've left somewhere. But if you need to figure out a problem, it means you have to come up with a solution. So the word out actually formed a phrasal verb with another verb other than go. So that's one of the things that can make it somewhat confusing. Okay, now phrasal verbs are usually abstract in meaning. So what that means is that if it's abstract in meaning, it describes something that is not concrete or definite. For example, if you pick up a fork, it means you physically or concretely, you lift the fork. If you pick up foreign languages easily, that's not a physical action. It means that you learn foreign languages. You pick up foreign languages easily. So this is very, very important that you can see that pick up is in a literal and pick up is also in a very abstract, not physical type of situation. So with this as background, let's look at just 10 common phrasal verbs. First one, draw up. So if you draw up a contract or agreement, it means to compose. So draw up, it sounds like maybe you'd be drawing something, but in this sense, it means to compose a document and put it in written form. So my lawyer will draw up a contract and send it for your review. Okay, the next one, get ahead. Again, here we have a verb and a preposition. This means to be successful in your career and life, to make progress, that you're getting ahead of others. You need to make lots of connections to get ahead in this industry, to progress, to be successful. And the next one, burnout. You may have heard this one before when involved in business. When you work so hard that you become so stressed and exhausted that you need time off, or you need, well, hopefully a glass of wine isn't always a solution. But if you keep working 17 hours a day, you'll burn out within a month. So burnout means that you're kind of done. You've had it. Okay. The next one, to measure up. So measure up means that it's not satisfactory if you don't measure up. So measure up means that you want to compare well with standards, but if you don't measure up, it means that you're not. So in the example, the designer's work just doesn't measure up to the quality we have come to expect. Okay, next one. Zero in on. This means to focus closely on something. For example, we've tried a lot of strategies, but we need to zero in on what's actually working. Zero in. You want your focus right on something. Next one. I use this. We don't like talking about it often, but it is a term we use often. And layoff means that an employee loses their job, the company terminates their employment, but it doesn't mean that somebody necessarily is fired. Companies downsize, companies sell off different business units. So, but laid off means that essentially they've lost a job. The R&T department had to lay off a few people last week. Okay, let's go to the next one. Pencil in. So when somebody says, I'm going to pencil you in, what it means is that they're making an appointment, but they're not putting it down in ink. They're not putting it down so that it can't be erased. Let's pencil in a lunch meeting for next Wednesday, which means that it's there, but you really do need to confirm whether it's going to happen or not. Okay, next one. Close down. Now, close down means that you stop operating something, or you finish a meeting, or something has come to an end. The company closed down the factory because it wasn't meeting production quotas. You can close down a meeting. You can close down all sorts of things. But it always means that something has come to an end. Next one. Run something by or past someone. It means that you're asking for their approval or feedback. So if you want to run something by somebody, it means that you're asking for their opinion. You're asking for their feedback, maybe their approval. That's an interesting idea. Let's run it by the boss and see what she thinks. Okay, next one. Sign off on. This means to give official approval. For example, the manager signed off on the revised budget. So when you sign off on something, that means it's left your desk and it's gone somewhere else with your approval. Okay, so what I'd like to do now on the phrasal verbs is to come up with 10 sentences with phrasal verbs and give you a chance in your own mind to, or if you'd like to chat in, that's fine, with what you think the right answer might be of the three underneath the sentences to be put into the blank. So, number one, and I've given you what the meaning is of how we are to complete the phrasal verb. So, in the weeks blank up to the meeting, we'll have to work very hard. So, a very typical phrasal verb. Answer is leading up to. Okay, so that means leading up to the meeting, before the meeting. Number two, they blank, which means created or developed a brilliant marketing strategy. So they created it, they composed it, they thought about it. Okay, they drew up a brilliant marketing strategy. Now, it probably didn't involve any drawing at all, but the fact is, drew up meant, or means in this case, to create it, to initiate, to be the author. Number three, we always contract that work when we get someone else to do it. And this is, this almost could be an idiom as well, because we might use 4 words together. But the answer to this one is we always contract that work out. So you'll often hear contract that work out or contract work out. So the contract to work out may kind of go over the line between idiom and phrasal verb. Next one. I want Mary to blank, which means to assume the new lead, the new Latin American unit. So that means what we're looking for is to assume the lead in. Okay? So The answer to that one would be head up, which head up means you've taken the lead. You're now the head of this project. You're the leader in the new Latin American unit. Okay, number 5. Let me blank, which is the same as start, by saying how proud I am of your contribution to this company. So it's something that means let me start by saying, but another way of saying it is let me lead off by saying. So in other words, you haven't done anything else other than you're leading with the fact that you're very proud of whomever it is that you're addressing. Number 6, you two should work together on this project. You two should blank. And again, I'm sure that this is something that you've heard before and potentially have even used in your everyday business. But the answer to this one is team up. You should team up on this project. Okay? You two will become a team. Number 7, the new cell phones will be launched in November. So when you're launching a new product, or even a project, you're rolling it out. The new cell phones will roll out in November. Okay, next one. I'm not sure what you're getting blank. I'm not sure what you mean. We use this often. When you don't understand something. I'm not sure what you're getting at. So if you tell somebody, I'm not sure what you're getting at, that means that you don't understand. You don't know what they mean. And number 9, Ford plans to, and this is one we just had, blank off 1,000 workers. They're going to lose their job. So we know that that one is plans to lay off 1,000 workers. And number 10, our business is really taking blank. It's becoming successful. It's going into the stratosphere. The profits are rising. So in this case, we would say our business is really taking off. So anybody have any questions or comments, or have you heard any idioms or phrasal verbs that you don't understand? Please feel free to chat with us now. An interesting thing is, as Carolina and I were preparing for this webinar, I found a book that we had used a few years ago, and the name of the book was The Most Common 1,000 Phrasal Verbs Ever Used. Now, 1,000 phrasal verbs is quite a daunting amount of phrasal verbs. So, if you hear some and you don't know what they mean, there are a lot of people just like you walking around who are native English speakers and they don't know what they mean. So, I don't want you to feel like you have all of this work to do. You have some, but I don't expect that anybody here in this meeting would know 1,000 phrasal verbs. So, if there are no questions, I just wanted to thank everybody for their time and let you know that, again, talk is available. And that, okay, somebody does have a question. Okay, it's coming in. It's coming in. Now, I'll give you another idiom as to, okay, I think Jenny came up with, I hear that I must cash in. So would that be an idiom? So cash in might actually be more of a phrasal verb. You wanted to cash in on something. You wanted to, there must have been some opportunity that you wanted to cash in on. I would use that more as a phrasal verb than an idiom. But if there were something, for example, germane to your business that had another part after cashing in on something, and I'm hard-pressed to think of what it is, you may have had that as an idiom, but for the purposes of just cashing in, I would say that that is more of a phrasal verb than an idiom. A great question. Okay. And Jenny also said, and what about when they say, root me out? It is not common, but I have heard that. When you root something out, that means that you're trying to dig into it, or you're trying to get somebody out of some, maybe you weren't able to understand them. But if you're rooting them out, it's kind of like, think of in a farm, when you're trying to get down to the roots of something. You're trying to root out maybe what you mean when you said something, or what you feel about something. If they're trying to root you out, that's what they're trying to do. Okay, so again, I just want to thank everybody for participating. I've enjoyed it. I hope it was valuable for your time, and I hope that we will meet by webinar sometime again. So